This is it, guys. Our last podcast episode for the foreseeable future. We have enjoyed doing these podcasts, and hopefully we will find a place to put our degrees in necromancy to use and resurrect it somewhere else in the future. However sad we are to see it go, we're also happy that Epic aren't taking us to court. So, before we get into that, let's have the theremin play us in one last time. Welcome to the last episode of the Sometimes Serious podcast. I'm your monstrously morbid, defiantly disgusting and ridiculously revolting host, Michael Palmer. Today I am joined by my notoriously nutty, wondrously weird and copiously crazy co-founder, Philip Edwards. Hello.
Hi. Hello. I'm
How
I'm
are
I'm
you
gonna miss that
feeling?
theremin. I mean,
Yeah, yeah.
gonna have to find a way to add it into the daily show, but I'm gonna miss it.
I've got ideas. I've got ideas, but I'm not going to say them now. We'll see how it
Oh,
goes.
I'm interested.
So, you brought to my attention about the Epic Games lawsuits that have been filed.
Yeah.
They seemed quite interesting. For those of you that don't know anything about it, Epic have been they've been playing very smart, haven't they? They knew exactly what the reactions were going to be, and they've been playing this very smart. So what's been happening is that as with every platform, the platform itself, the company behind that platform, take what is it? It's a 30% cut, isn't it,
Yep.
of all the sales? And Epic well, they're a little bit sick of that. And I say, to pass the savings on to us consumers, in a bid to win us over, they are directing people of a different way to pay for their V-Bucks, isn't it? Is
Yeah.
is it V-Bucks? Yeah, it is V-Bucks. I don't do Fortnite, people. I just don't. So forgive me if I get anything to do with Fortnite wrong, but they've been directing people on how to purchase their V-Bucks without having to do it uh, in a manner that would give Apple their 30%. And because
Slight
of that,
slight correction.
oh, go for it.
When you get your payment option, like when you used to go onto the Apple Store and you used
Yeah,
to click, oh, I want to purchase V-Bucks for Fortnite on mobile, the Fortnite client would offer you can pay through Apple or you can
that's
pay
it.
directly to Epic.
That's it. So that's what they were doing, and they were basically pushing for you to pay directly to Epic because you'd pay less. And Apple's response was rather hilarious, much like a stroppy child. Just went, fine, you're banned. Fortnite is banned off any iOS device. And I think from here on out, it'd be better that you explained exactly what they've gone and done as their retaliation.
Uh, so Epic, knowing this was coming, knowing exactly what they were going to do, had announced ahead of time that they had a new cinematic coming out. The moment they got hit with a ban, they filed a lawsuit in California against Apple for being anti-competitive. And in California, there are anti-competitive laws. And the start of the lawsuit states how Apple years ago said that they didn't want the world to become like 1984. They were rallying against that, and Epic have used that against them, that they've become the exact juggernaut they used to rally against. And then they immediately released their trailer, 1980 Fortnite. And it's been
Which,
looped on their Twitch, on their
yeah,
YouTube, on their Twitter.
I would like to say, just for those of you that don't know what 1984 is, it's a novel, I believe, George Orwell, but
Hmm.
it's all about oppression from the state and being told what to think, what to do, what to say. It's no longer you think this, you feel that. It's you are told to, so you do. It's very, very telling of how things, back when it was written, it was very telling of how things were feared to be going. And unfortunately, no matter when you read it, there are parts of it that you do suddenly look at real life and go, oh, wow, I can't believe it's actually gotten to that point. So
Yeah.
this is a very, very clever play on them, not just the quoting it back to them in a rather, I was going to say cheeky, but in a rather very direct way of
I can pull
poking
the
Apple and
exact quote if
going,
you want,
yeah, please do. Yeah.
because I have been
They've
reading
done a
through the
very
lawsuit.
direct way, and it's very clever, not just for the play on words, but for just how accurate it is.
Okay, the direct quote, the first two paragraphs of the nature of the action, because I have been reading through the actual lawsuit.
Yep.
In 1984, the fledgling Apple Computer Company released Macintosh, the first mass-market, consumer-friendly home computer. The product launch was announced with a breathtaking advertisement evoking George Orwell's 1984 that cast Apple as a beneficial, revolutionary, force-breaking IBM's monopoly over the computing technology market. Apple's founder Steve Jobs introduced the first showing of the 1984 advertisement by explaining, "It appears IBM wants it all. Apple is perceived to be the only hope to offer IBM a run for its money. Will Big Blue dominate the entire computer industry, the entire information age? Was George Orwell right about 1984?" Then paragraph 2. Fast forward to 2020, and Apple has become what it once rallied against, the behemoth seeking to control markets, block competition, and stifle innovation. Apple is bigger, more powerful, more entrenched, and more pernicious than the monopolists of yesteryear. At a market cap of nearly $2 trillion, Apple's size and reach far exceeds that of any technology monopolist in history.
Yeah. It's absolutely fantastic to see a company n- actually know what they're doing and have had
Mm-hmm.
enough foresight to plan all of this so well. And it gets even better. Yeah, you wouldn't think it if you're one of these people that doesn't like Apple products, not because you think it's trendy to hate on Apple, but because you genuinely think they're bad. I'm with you. We're with you, to be fair. But it gets even better, and Fortnite has now been banned off Android phones, hasn't it?
Yep,
It's
Google, seeing how bad this would be if they won,
yeah,
pre-banned it.
yeah, and Epic has also responded to them in very much the same manner.
Almost the exact same, in fact.
It's absolutely fantastic. And as much as I'm not a massive fan of Fortnite, mostly because I'm just terrible at it, but I also don't really enjoy having a building aspect in battle royales. But for those that do, fair play to you. That's your jam. Good on you. I'm glad you got something you enjoy. It's just not for me. And even though it's not for me, I look at this and I go, do it. Absolutely do it. Take these two down. They need to be dropped down a few notches. They need to remember that just because you're this big doesn't mean you're untouchable.
Epic really is trying to swing for the consumers here. This will
Yeah,
actually, if this goes through and they win this, because they're not seeking any monetary relief from the case, they're just seeking a change in policies to ensure that it's actually fair and balanced across everyone. If they can actually do this, that's actually going to mean quite a lot for a lot of developers.
yeah.
Like screw the big name developers, screw them. The indie developers, the people who make these
Think
tiny apps, they're going to
for,
make
for
so much more
everyone,
money.
for everyone that plays these mobile games, I did used to own an iPhone. I think it was an iPhone 4S. Can't remember what model. Yeah, it was definitely a 4. I'm sure it was an S. Anyway, I still played games on that mobile, and one of them was, I want to say it was called Infinity Blade, but I cannot remember if that's the exact name of it. I enjoyed that game. Now that wasn't made by a small company. I think that was made by a relatively big one, especially in terms of mobile games. It could have even had the backing of someone like Epic, but I can't remember. But there were a few games that I have played on there that I obviously, when I came back to Android, I looked for and they didn't exist. So, I did the same thing that most people do. I looked for a way to make it exist. Unfortunately, the only version of it that exists is in its native language, which is Korean. It was a great little RPG, but it's not sold over here in the West anymore because it got screwed over by the entire system, basically, by the fact that they would have to charge more than is reasonable and people weren't willing to pay it, all because of that 30%. So to see that go, to see everyone get the same fair treatment would be absolutely fantastic. And although it wouldn't, I would hope that it would at least wouldn't get rid of. I would hope that it would at least lessen the amount of horrible microtransactions that are there. I'm not saying I'm not saying there are good ones, but I'm saying that there are some that are tolerable, and hopefully we'd see more tolerable microtransactions rather than the more sort of, hey, we're going to charge you 100 currency of the realm for an amount of premium currency in this game. Hopefully it would be lessened. Hopefully.
There is broader and wider reaching consequences if they win.
Oh yeah, it'll
It
make them a
will,
silly amount of money.
well, not I'm not thinking about, actually Epic. It will allow, I'm pretty sure everyone heard that Microsoft stopped their testing for an iOS version of xCloud because Apple wouldn't let it.
Yeah,
Apple were directly against it, saying, "Oh no, it infringes on our policy," because Apple have a competitor in the market. This would affect that, and
yeah,
they wouldn't have a choice. They would have to put it up, and it would have to be fair
yeah,
and balanced. It just means more games for everyone and a
yeah.
better and fairer market for the developers. How can you not be cheering this one on?
I I really hope that Epic wins because this is going to sound like I'm fanboying a bit too hard, but I suppose I am in a way, but I really really want to see Microsoft absolutely knock Android's and iOS's own versions of xCloud and Game Pass and all of that out. Just absolutely knock them out cold. I'd love to
Yeah,
see that happen.
there was an interesting supporter who came out. I say came out. It was found in an interview from like a couple of months ago, but it was this person saying that they do kind of support this push, so they're pretty much on side. And it's someone you wouldn't really expect. Gabe Newell.
No,
Gabe Newell's
really?
down. Gabe Newell in the statement was not supporting this situation, but was supporting this kind of movement. So I think it's only a matter of time before Gabe Newell actually comes out with Valve and goes, "Yeah, we actually wholeheartedly support him."
I
And
hope
that's
they
Epic's
do.
biggest rival.
Yeah,
This is kind
but
of insane.
but if Valve come out and say, "Hey, we wholeheartedly support this," it'll be because they're hoping it's going to be enough of a distraction for Epic that it's not going to affect them on PC.
Ah, that would be really stupid because if they push for more equality among all companies, well, actually no, because the PC market is way more fractured. There's only really two providers in the mobile market, and that's Android and iOS. You don't really have any
Yeah,
other options.
yeah,
PC, it's a much freer market. So it still allows them to hit each other, but then like if Epic gets this through, GeForce Now, who have partnered with Valve, gets to go onto iOS and Android.
yeah.
So
And
it
again,
does
that's even
benefit them.
more.
It benefits everyone. That's the thing. It benefits
Yeah,
everyone except Apple and Android because they
I
no longer get to hold a monopoly over it. They
I
have to
think
be fair and competitive.
this is one of those times where, despite the fact that the big companies are going to be making more money out of it, minus Apple and Google, I I feel like this is one of those times where you can forgive them for it because they've done something so consumer friendly that they have banked more goodwill than they would be able to spend with this action alone.
Well, yeah, the way that they're going to get more money here is by ensuring that we get to save money, so we're not paying as much, which
Yeah.
encourages us to pay more often because hey, you got me a cheaper deal.
Yeah.
So that's how the economy is meant to work. It's meant to be competitive to earn your money, and then you keep going back because you like that company and they keep giving you the best deal, so they earn more money. That's
That's,
how that's how it's meant
yeah.
to work.
It unfortunately doesn't, especially in America. Um, I can only make the broadest of statements when it comes to the differences between us in the UK and America in terms of how businesses are run. And even then, it's very limited because aside from the Sometimes Serious show, which, hey, we love, it's our thing, we're going to carry on doing it. Aside from that, we have never tried to run a business. We've never tried to start up in any market that's, you know, let's say a supermarket, for instance. We've never tried to compete with any of them, so we wouldn't know how it goes with every painful detail. But it does seem to be that over here, we're we started out, I'm going to say, better than the way America's businesses conduct themselves, but we do appear to be going in the same direction slowly. However, America seems to be at such an accelerated rate that every time there's competition, it's not a case of let's drop it and make better deals and, you know, actually get more customers. It seems to be, oh no, we've got more competition. Let's ramp the price up by about 30%.
Yeah, it's because like America does actually have laws in place that allows the government to break up monopolies. It allows them to break them up and make them into smaller companies to ensure monopolies don't exist. But every time they've gone to do something like that, the big companies have pressured people to go to their congressman and write into their congressman going, "Oh, my freedoms." Okay, but these companies are just using you. The government is actually trying to help you here. But still, people just
And
get rallied because they don't actually pay any attention. They just get a letter going from like Verizon going, "Oh,
yeah,
we're about to get shut down and you're going to lose all of your internet and we won't be able to give you such great deals. You need to contact your congressman and tell them no." Actually, if the congressman broke it up, you would get a better deal.
yeah, there'd be
But
more
it's obviously
shopping
not in the
around and
company's interest to say that.
yeah. And I mean, I get it. There are a lot of people out there. I know it's easier now more than it ever was to switch your provider, but it's only a little bit of shopping around. It's honestly no different than going into your biggest complex or going into the city and having a look through every single window. It's honestly no different to that. The only difference being you're sat at home. You're not
Uh,
doing it out on your feet.
there is a difference, quite a big difference. Comparison sites exist. So it's go look into one specific window where they will show you the cheapest.
But it's still window shopping. That's the thing. And for any that decide not to be on those comparison sites, or the comparison sites don't get the right figure because you think you can get a better deal by phoning up and shopping around, it's not much work to do. It's a pain to be sure. It's annoying that we have to do it, but it's not that much of a workload to do. And yet, the internet providers are the worst ones, or one of the worst ones in America. So Epic being able to win this would actually be able to show an instance where everyone's going to benefit from knocking down one of these big corporations.
I do hope they take them. All right, come on,
Yeah,
Epic, you've got to win this. If Epic wins, I will play Fortnite. I've never played Fortnite before. I will play Fortnite if they win.
if Epic
I'll
wins, I
actually
will
do it.
reinstall Fortnite. I will play it with you on stream.
We'll do a 24-hour stream where we just play Fortnite.
I'll probably be drunk by the end of it.
That's
In fact, I
fine.
can almost guarantee it.
We'll do a 24-hour stream where we just play Fortnite. Come on, Epic. You got to win this.
Uh,
I'm actually
but
hoping it takes them several years to win this case, and then we forget about it, and everyone else forgets about
honestly, I'm hoping it happens sooner rather than later because then we can get it out of the way.
it.
But I think that at the moment that is as up to date the information as we can get. Right now, it's obviously going to have to go through all the legal procedures, and we'll just have to wait until after all that. Hope for some big juicy updates that we can tell you guys about in our daily shows, even if it is just a quick aside at the end. Hopefully, Epic wins. But moving on to a topic that Philip has been eager to talk about for a few weeks now, and one that we've touched on slightly, but every time we've touched on it off camera, when we've not been recording, we've stopped ourselves purely because we wanted to have this discussion with you listeners, funnily enough, listening. We want to know your thoughts on this as well, and it's how long and how much of a game do you need to play to be able to release a review that is actually worth paying attention to? Because there's a lot of review bombing in both down and up for games now, especially when a company is suddenly publicly revealed that they are not a nice company to work for, or they've had some shady dealings,
Fuck you,
any
Ubisoft.
manner of it. Yeah, there's a lot that goes on, and these reviews are not a reflection of the game, but a reflection of the company. And honestly, in one sense, that's fair enough. But at the same time, if the game itself is good and the company hasn't done something as bad as a certain Ubisoft has, I mean, a certain company, whoops, oh no, I said their name, then there's no reason to be leaving negative reviews on a game, especially if the company that you're leaving it because of is only a publisher. Because it
I
actually
can
can
kind of
hurt
see it
the
though.
developers.
But that's the reason it's done, is because between the actual community and the actual developers, like the higher ups, we're at an all-time low of real communication. So
Yes,
sometimes review bombing a game is the only way to actually get your opinion heard.
it
To
is.
let the company know this game sucks. You missed the mark. Fix
Yep,
it. Sometimes review
and I
bombing's the
get
only
that.
way.
I get that. But again, if the company you're trying to get that message to is the publisher, and let's take New Vegas, for instance, everyone associated Bethesda with its development, everyone complained to Bethesda, and Bethesda took a backbench and kept going, no, it's Obsidian's thing. Now, while I'm not aware of any review bombing that happened on that game, it's rather universally loved as universally agreed that it is a great game. However, there were so many bugs and there are still so many bugs. It is a buggy game, but it is still a good game. But when it released, there were so many bugs that people weren't happy about that they felt the need to send Bethesda strongly worded messages, I think would be a fair way of saying it without being too explicit in the detail. And if they had gone and review bombed the game, now I didn't play the game when it came out. I have been playing it recently though. But if it had been review bombed, can you imagine how much of a terrible impact that would have been on a company that is actually really good, when in fact it wasn't a reflection on the game, it was a reflection on the poor quality for the quality of life of the game, if that made sense.
The thing is that the reason why I know it doesn't matter, like the reason why I know it doesn't really have an effect on them, is because it wasn't review bombed, and they still got screwed because they quite famously missed a Metacritic score by 1 point, and Bethesda didn't give Obsidian their bonuses. So that's how I know it actually wouldn't have any effect. It is a way of voicing concerns, and I'm certain there are some examples of it being detrimental to a company, but not publisher side. Not like if the company has a publisher, I don't think there's any effect on that relationship because the publisher's already going to screw them anyway. But the publisher screwed Obsidian anyway.
Oh yeah,
How
they did.
like it's 4 to 5 years for a Bethesda game. It used to be 4 to 5 years for a Bethesda game. They made New Vegas in 18 months.
I keep forgetting that. I honestly keep forgetting that New Vegas was done in less than 2 years.
It's why it felt rushed and it felt buggy because they were rushed.
And it
Bethesda
was
put so
buggy.
much pressure on them and it was done in 18 months. And hell yeah, Obsidian. 18 months and you
But
guys made what's known as the greatest Fallout game. Good on you.
But on the other side of all this review bombing, you've got people that leave reviews after playing about an hour of a game. Now, taking all the small games aside, all the games that would only take a couple of hours to complete, like Abzu, for instance, taking all of those aside, an hour isn't really enough time in some games to actually be able to review it. But because it's only some games, because you can get that sort of feel for a game with some games, there doesn't seem to be a universally agreed length of time that you should play a game for before your review can be considered relevant.
That was, the original question that I posited is there an amount of time you have to play a game before your opinion becomes like valid?
And
Or does it not matter? Or is there a certain percentage you have to reach?
well, didn't we both agree before we decided to have the conversation on in yeah recorded for our listeners? Did we not agree that Anthem was one of those games where you could tell after about an hour that it just was not a good game? And yet, if you played an hour of, I don't know, I was going to say The Witcher, but I think I'm not sure if it's just because I love The Witcher or not, but it feels like that would also be enough time to be able to go, hey, The Witcher's a good game. But like I say, I'm not sure if that's because I love it or not.
To be fair, I didn't know I loved The Witcher in the first hour. If you'd only put me in it for an hour, I wouldn't have told you that I loved the game. It's the weird thing, like, is there a defined limit? Is there a and then the other part of it is that the discussion we've had, and I'll bring it up again, Assassin's Creed Odyssey.
Yeah,
We know someone who played less of it than you did
yep,
and says it's one of their favorite games. They absolutely adore it. Whereas
yep.
I played all of the game and I'll tell you it's terrible. I'll
And
tell you
I've
that
played,
there's a 30-hour good game in there surrounded with 80 hours of shit.
and I would like to let everyone know that you and I are completionists. We do like to go and visit all of uh, the viewpoints, all of those bits. We like to be able to go and get those chests. We feel like we have to be able to say I've completed it, and so we do, and we generally do it area by area, the way that these newer Assassin's Creeds went. And so you managed to somehow slog your way through that, and I will forever be baffled as to how you had the constitution to be able to do that and not throw yourself out of your window for it. Because I've played, what is it? It's got to be over 40 hours worth of that game, I think it is. And I honestly didn't get anywhere. I was so bored for pretty much the entire time I was playing it. Obviously, the first 30 minutes of that game, I was like, wow, look at the game, it's a beautiful game. And then once that had gone, I was just left there going, this is actually incredibly boring and I don't want to play it. But I didn't make much of a dent in the actual progression of the game. So is my review of the game that it's terrible, slow, boring, null and void because I didn't make that much progression despite the amount of time I put in?
That's that's the weird thing. I'm not sure if there is a definitive line, and I'm not sure if like clearly time played has to matter. It has to. But how much does it matter? Because if I was to only play Assassin's Creed Odyssey for 20 minutes, does my opinion matter as much as someone who played it for 200 hours? No, it shouldn't, because I played it for 20 minutes. That doesn't mean jack. But then is that universal? If someone plays 5 minutes of Anthem, is their opinion as valid as someone who's put 200 hours into it?
It's a strange one because it's very much a game per game basis. You know, I've got games on my list that I can almost guarantee that you would not enjoy. You know, that's not to say you'd hate them, but you definitely wouldn't enjoy them. And you could play 10 minutes of one of them and you'd know that you didn't like it and you'd be able to say why. Whereas I could carry on playing many, many hours of that game. But I think one of the other ones that we discussed or briefly touched on was Warframe. I have put an inhuman amount of hours into Warframe. And I could give you a very thorough review, minus the newer content. I haven't played it for about 6 to 8 months now. I still love the game. I'll go back to it eventually, but I haven't played it for about that long. And I could give you a very thorough review of the game for up to where I stopped playing. However, if someone got put off of it within the first hour, I personally would not hold it against them because I know what the learning curve for that game is like. However, as an outsider looking in, would you be able to take that person's review seriously compared to, say, mine? Because, I mean, you've played Warframe, you know what that beginning is like. You know what a steep learning curve for that game is. And we both went through it, didn't we? When we first started the game, we had about 3 months off before we touched it again, each of us. It's just mine happened before you because I played the game before you.
That there is like a definitive in Warframe 20 hours right at the start where your enjoyment level will just drop to zero. But if you push through that 0 point, then it skyrockets.
Yeah, absolutely.
But
And
there is that
you will,
20 hours of just bad,
yeah,
and it's just ugh,
and it's
ugh, and
it's
then you
it's
just
that sort of
get it.
it's that sort of adjustment period for how the game goes and actually learning the game rather than being told by the game.
It's the question of
But
if someone put in 10 hours into it and didn't enjoy any of it, and they came out with a very concise review saying, I didn't enjoy it for this, and this reason. Is their review valid? Is their opinion valid? Should you listen to that? Because
That
we
if you
know if
look
you
at,
push through, it gets better.
well, yeah, but again, if you're looking at just the amount of time played, 10 hours would be a reasonable amount. That would be more than enough for me on average to look at the review and go, okay, you've played a fair amount of that. But when it comes to Warframe, okay, you've played 10 hours of it. You haven't played a fair amount of it, though. Warframe is one of those games where, because of that slow but very steep hump you need to get over before you can experience the rest of the game, you only experience a fraction of a percentage of the game there. You get your introduction to a wide amount of mechanics and different modes, but you don't really get to the actual meat and gravy of the game. So it's very Warframe's one of those unique ones, I think. But again, it's hard to know, you know. So as an outsider looking in, could you take it? I think I would at sudden face value if I had no knowledge of Warframe. I'd probably look at that 10-hour review and I would have to compare it with a review that is thousands of hours. I am not going to say how much I've played that game.
It's such a weird one. It's so like I get that each game would have different thresholds, but there must be a framework. There must be premises that can be applied to each of them. And it's, what are they? Is time put into a review, like X length of time? Does that make it valid? What about percent completed? What about amount of story experienced? What about, you know, do all these factors actually matter, or is it much more of a personal thing of, you can turn on a game and immediately, like there have been plenty of games, Dishonored 1 for instance, for me, I turned it on and within 30 seconds I was like, I don't like it. It just feels bad to me. That's not me saying it's a bad game, but to me it was. I couldn't gel with it.
See, I had a similar experience with the first Dishonored. It's just it took me a lot longer. You know, I got so far through and I was like, you know, up to I forget where the point hit me where I was just like, I actually don't enjoy this. I was still sort of in that honeymoon phase, I suppose, just purely because I hadn't seen much like it before.
See, but
So,
then doesn't that by its nature, well, does that, not doesn't that, does that by its nature make it a bad game? Because you had to get through all of that to actually then appreciate it. Or shouldn't you have grabbed me at the start? Shouldn't you have grabbed me and taken me and gone, look, this is going to be fantastic? There have been plenty of games that have done that.
okay, but how many
Does that
games
make
have
it a
there
bad
been
game?
that you've slogged through and all of a sudden it's gripped you for whatever reason, storytelling, character, whatever? How many games have you played where you've gone, I really don't like this, but you know, I feel like I should play a bit more of it just to be able to know, and then all of a sudden just that singular point has just, and then all of a sudden you're like, actually, this is actually a really good game.
See, but then on the flip side, how many have I gone through where it's been that massive slog and then there is not a point? It just goes, this was just bad. This
Yeah.
was just bad. The perfect example of playing it through and then there was just that point was Doom 2016. I really did not enjoy that game for maybe 60-70% of the game. And then it just clicked. And then once that click happened, I was in love with it. I couldn't put it down. I went back and played through it multiple times over because I fell in love with it. There just wasn't that click to begin with. But then once it clicked, it had clicked. But that's the
See,
thing. What how
but I can
how how can you define that? How can you put that into like a, hey, you didn't play enough of it that it didn't click? How do you know?
see, but that's why I said that if I were an outsider looking in terms of reviews for Warframe, I would have to look at someone who's put, say, 10 hours into the game compared to someone that's put at least a couple of hundred in. Just, you know, someone that's put a ridiculous amount of hours in. purely because if your view of it has not changed from when you say post a review at the 10-hour mark and you've suddenly put in 200 hours and that's it and you've not touched it again because you still believe it's bad, then honestly, yeah, it's a bad game. But the problem is with reviews, because they are, as you say, as you mentioned, they can be quite personal. It is your experience of the game. So it's hard to sift through the reviews where it's just people going, I didn't like it because they didn't actually like that type of game. Not because the game was bad, they just aren't a fan of that type of game, and that's the game that made them realise it. And then you've got to also watch out for the ones where people are just going to like the game because it's made by the company that they like, not because the game is good.
I'm just wondering if there is like an objective side to it, because using that kind of example, uh, we know people who don't like Monster Hunter. They play it, they don't like it. Reese, for example, he doesn't like how slow it is. He doesn't like how it's also clunky and how it's all really animation driven. I think that's a fair assessment of it. Whereas on my side, that game is one of the greatest games ever made, and I will not be convinced otherwise. And if you disagree, you're wrong. It's not subjective, you are wrong. That game is fantastic. And that's a
But
hill I
then
will die on.
you say that, but then is that because you love the game or because the game is actually good?
I think it's both. I reckon I could argue for both. I love the game, but independent of me loving that game, it is one of the greatest games ever made. And
Yeah.
it's one of those weird things of is yeah, is there an objective side to it? Is there an objective fact about it that goes bang this is good, bang this is bad? And then that's wandered way off topic. The original part was so you've played 40 hours of Assassin's Creed, I've played probably close to 200. Is my opinion more valid than yours?
See, I always want to say no because I know I've experienced almost every mechanic that game can throw at me. Just because I know the nature of the way the new Assassin's Creeds work. And I enjoyed Origins. I did not enjoy Odyssey. I didn't enjoy Odyssey. I found it boring, as I've already said. I I to give some background, I love Greek mythology. Growing up, once a year, family, which was myself, my mother, and my grandparents, we all went to Greece every year around my birthday because my birthday falls um, in the summer. We'd always go on holiday, and I loved it. I loved learning about the Greek culture. I loved learning about the mythology, especially, and all of the stories they've got surrounding all of their gods. I absolutely loved it. I still do. And I thought I'd enjoy Odyssey. I was very much wrong. I I cannot describe, and not because there are no words for it, but because I do not have those words in my vocabulary, just how disappointed I am by that game. I wanted it to be something spectacular, and instead I found it shallow, boring, and nothing more than a mind-numbing distraction that actually made me prefer sleeping to any form of interactivity with that game.
But maybe that click was in the 150 odd hours that you didn't play. Maybe that click was there waiting for you.
And and that's fair. Maybe it was. I wasn't willing to go through all that rubbish though. And I call it rubbish because I had experienced every mechanic that game could throw at me. There,
I'll cover you with this one on both sides. If it's the personal side, then you've got it covered. If it's the objective side and you need to play through everything and do everything, I've got it covered. Yeah, that game was shit.
See, but that's why you can't ever take any one review for a game. I will always I do occasionally play on PC and I do buy games on Steam occasionally, but I will always look through about 10 reviews for a game first. I don't care what the overall feeling for the game is. Even if it says overwhelmingly negative, I will still read through those reviews because I want to make sure that it's genuine reasons. I want to be able to read a review where someone's going, okay, it's terrible because they couldn't quite do this mechanic and it really shows. And instead, what they did was they tried to mask it with some smoke and mirrors and some random BS. That's the sort of review I'm going to pay more attention to. But I'm also going to be looking at how much time you've played because I feel like when that's the only stat you can see for a review and not percentage completion as well, that has to take that has to factor in. You can't you can't honestly take a review from someone that's played 10 minutes of a 60-hour game seriously because you've played the tutorial. Congratulations. But on the
So
flip side, when you look at a smaller game, 10 minutes is a large chunk.
does that mean you're coming down on the side of time played, like time played in relation to how long the game is and percent completed does create a more valid opinion?
I think I am falling on that side. And I do think that's because I can say in all confidence that I believe Odyssey is terrible. However, you, because of your percent completion and the amount of hours that you've put in, could actually give a robust review. I can only turn around and go, I've tried these mechanics, didn't like a single one of them, and I found the game boring. Whereas you can turn around and go, honestly, plot points were rubbish for XYZ. Um, this
I
mechanic was
really
terrible
could.
because of one, two, and three.
I really could.
Yeah. So I do feel like it does actually hold weight. It's just there's only so much weight it can hold. Like I say, a 10-minute review of a 60-hour game has no weight. You've played the tutorial. A 10-minute review of
Okay.
a 1 hour game has
So
weight. You've played
you
10%.
what you're saying is
Actually,
there is a percent of
played a sixth.
validity that, so let's say it's, I don't know, 60%. Let's say it's 40%. If someone's played and completed it and like played through everything there is to offer, then they can only be a set percent more valid than someone who hasn't.
Well,
Not
yeah,
not
for
that it can just blow
instance,
it out the water. Not like it's your opinion
no.
doesn't matter because you haven't played and completed it all. I have, so mine does.
Yeah,
It's
it's
more
not.
your opinion does matter, but mine matters a little bit more.
Yeah, but that's because, and to take a screenshot that I saw that I read out to you about someone who had given a negative review on a game. The game wasn't disclosed, but the joke is it could only be Ark Survival Evolved. They had left a review after 8,000 hours, but their current hours on record when the screenshot was taken were over 17,000. So at that point, I have to look at that and go, I don't care that you've left a negative review. Why have you gone back to it for another 9,000 hours? It can't be that bad if you've played another 9,000 hours of that game.
Maybe we just need a higher quality of reviewer.
Especially in
That
Latin.
well, yeah, everyone everyone likes to go 0 or 10, where most games fall between a 3 and a 7,
Yeah.
but no one really wants to click between a 3 and a 7. And if I play a game like I wouldn't say Odyssey was a 0. There were definitely some things in there that were good, and there were some things it was very pretty, and I liked some of the sail mechanics because that was just Black Flag. I did them so much, it wore me out. and the DLC was just so long, even though it was probably good. But I was on that slog, and I was just like, please end, just end, just stop, please.
Whereas I didn't even get that far because 40 hours in and not really having done much other than the stuff that I knew I would enjoy the most in that game, and having done a few bits of the story and meeting some of the key figures that would take key roles in the story, I just wasn't impressed. I wasn't impressed with the interaction. I thought it was boring and dull, and the attempts at humor were awful. Every mechanic that I had actually experienced was just the same thing as before. It felt too samey, and looking at the map, I could tell I was going to be doing a lot of it. And no matter how much I may enjoy the mechanic of sneaking through a bush and stabbing someone in the back of the leg and then killing them, you know, doesn't matter how much I enjoyed that mechanic, I knew I'd get bored with it.
But
And
is it a 0?
no, the game was beautiful.
See, that's the thing. It falls somewhere between the 3 and the 7, much closer
Yeah.
to the 3 than the 7.
Yeah, I honestly, out of that, I would give it a 3. Just because, hey, that was a beautiful game. I want to tip my hat that doesn't exist to the art team because, wow, it was beautiful. It was beautiful being able to stand on these tall structures and look out and go, look at that. Absolutely breathtakingly beautiful. But that's it. It was an interactive piece of art. That's all that was. That wasn't a game to me. That was something that I turned on to walk around and go, look at that tree. That's a pretty tree. You know.
But before the Ubisoft allegations, I probably would have gone more on 5. But it would have been a 5, but with a big marker of don't buy it. Do not buy it, do not play it. Yes, it's average, and that means some of you will really enjoy it, but don't. Just don't. It's 200
Save the
hours you're not
money.
getting back.
But
It's a really interesting thing that I don't think there is anything concrete. Like I'm not certain my opinion on it is set in stone of being like, yeah, this is definitely more valid or not. I'm
but then
intrigued.
it's definitely more robust. But that's the thing, and I think that threshold, like I say, about 10 minutes in a 60-hour game and 10 minutes in an hour game, is actually a lot more personal than objective. I reckon it's a lot more subjective. I reckon it's going to be very different for everyone. Because again, I did say, and you've said it before in other in other podcast episodes about other games, that there are just some games that you can turn on, and within 10 minutes you do know whether or not, one, you like it, and two, if it's actually any good.
Yeah.
There are some games you can do that with, but the problem is actually being able to tell which games that is and the type of person that's leaving the review.
Basically, what this whole thing was basically leading up to is when we start doing game reviews, you can trust us and listen to us.
Yeah, I can guarantee that when we do eventually get around to doing game reviews, because we'll do them, when we do, it will be a case of one of us will have played a lot more of it than the other. Not on purpose, that's not going to be a case of, hey, so for this game you play more of it than me. It's just going to happen at some point that one of us has played a lot more of it than the other. And so even if our opinions are the same, one of us can give a more robust review. However, there will probably be games where we both turn around and say the exact opposite to each other. So we're not looking to sort of unify on the review. We want to give our honest opinions on it. But you you do have to bear in mind with every review that it's down to the type of person that's played it and what your personal thresholds are. Like, I do pay attention to the amount of hours someone's played, but that's because usually that's the only stat that you can see. So it kind of has to be taken into consideration.
I think my goal, like when we get to doing reviews, will just be to give objective reasons, like reasons that are irrefutable, like bang, this is why it's bad. Okay, you can enjoy it, but it's bad. And you can enjoy bad games, and that's fine, but this is definitively why it is bad. It is a bad game.
Yeah.
It's not saying you don't get to enjoy it, but it's bad.
Well, just as the last addition to that, we actually know someone who can admit that the game that they enjoy is bad. And again, it's Reese and it's 76. He can see it, but he still enjoys it, and that's fine.
You're allowed to play and enjoy what you play and enjoy, as
Yeah.
long as if someone presents objective fact, you're still willing to go, okay, I can see that that's objective fact.
Yeah. Now, that just about does us for this episode. However, not only to make up for the 2 weeks of it that I've missed doing this segment, but also because it's going to be the last time, hopefully forever. Hopefully, hint, hint, don't write it in anywhere. It's time for Menzies Mildly Interesting.
Yay!
And I'm going to read 5 to you back to back and hope that they mildly interest you. So the first one is the scientific term for brain freeze is sphenopalatine ganglio. I always have a problem saying this. Ganglioneuralgia. Oh my giddy aunt. Sphenopalatine ganglioneuralgia. That is the scientific term for brain freeze. So I think I'll just keep calling it brain freeze from now on.
Yeah.
My next one is a wildlife technician, Richard Thomas, took the famous tongue twister, how much wood would a woodchuck chuck if a woodchuck could chuck wood, and calculated a rough estimate of what the answer would actually be. It came out to be around £700.
He needs to get a life.
The third one, the red Solo cups are a common souvenir to bring back from the United States. The novelty comes from the cups being used in many party scenes in movies. Because people are oh so original. My second to last one is Ben & Jerry's has an online flavour graveyard for their 10 discontinued ice cream flavours. Each one has a photo, lifespan, and epitaph.
A flavour graveyard, Jesus.
You can take a virtual walk around a flavour graveyard. And my last one is scientists discovered sharks that are living in an active underwater volcano. Divers cannot investigate because they would get burns from the acidity and heat.
So volcano sharks.
Yes.
Like a lava shark?
Don't go jumping ahead thinking we're about to step into Monster Hunter and have a lava Seoth on our hands, okay?
Does it shoot fire at its mouth?
We're not having lava sharks.
Alright,
You're all right.
I'm getting my longsword.
I knew I shouldn't have read that one out. Well, for the last time, it's a goodbye from me, goodbye, and a goodbye from Philip,
Goodbye.
and we'll see you tomorrow.